Yeah, today we're going to be talking about security in Dataverse. We've said that one of the advantages of Dataverse is it has a very detailed security model. That's
Mm-hmm.
why we always try to push Dataverse to clients because, we get a lot of things out of the box. If you're not using Dataverse, you have to spend a lot of time to build those things into the solution. But Dataverse is a full system on its own, so it has like loads of security concepts. We'll be going through different ways of setting up security. In the real world, you don't use all of them. You may not use all of them, but it's good for you to know the options available. And based on the situation of the client or based on the type of solution you are building, you will now decide on, which of the security models you want to do. So, and you can stack them up. You can use all of them if that's what's required, right? Because each of the security concepts, they kind of focus on different areas. So it depends on how detailed you want to go with the security, but it's as flexible as you would want it to be. So, um, and talking about security is built up upon what you can see on the screen. So we have teams. Now, teams are groups of users, right?
Uh-huh.
Now, when interacting with your application, you could have different teams. Or when interacting with your solution, there could be different teams. Maybe there's like you're building a project application and we have the project managers. Okay, it's calling me again. Let's see. We are looking into security concepts in Dataverse. And so what I was saying is there are different ways of setting up security. You can stack them together. So you can use multiple, you can use some, depending on, the solution you're building or the client you're deploying it, what their requirements are. So security is built upon these things you're seeing on the screen. So we have teams. Teams are groups of users, right? So maybe you're building a project application. There could be different teams. There could be teams of developers. There could be teams of project managers. There could be teams of, you know, there could be different teams that interact with a single record. So when you're setting up teams, you are deciding, okay, for each team, what's level of access. So in the previous classes, we kind of touched about security roles where we have levels of access and privileges, right? So for example, the create privilege has different levels of access. You can create, or let's use read. I like using read as an example. So read privilege has different levels of access. So if you have user access for read privilege, that means you'll be able to see only your records. Somebody that has business unit access will be able to see their own records and records of others within the same business unit. If you have parent-child business unit access, you'll be able to see within your business unit and the business units under your business unit because you see on the right here, you can stack business units on top of each other like a tree. So you can see we have a root business unit and you can have multiple business units. So if you have parent-child business unit access, for example, if you are in the root business unit or if you're in business unit one, you'll be able to see records for business units under you. So that's a way of setting up security, right? And
Right.
you
What do you
know,
mean by like exactly by root business units? Sorry.
so in every Dataverse environment has a business unit
Yeah.
that is there. So that's a root business unit. So you can now say, and when you're talking about business units can be maybe sales.
Okay.
Sales can be a business unit. IT can be a business unit,
Yeah.
right? And I believe I mentioned that every record in Dataverse keeps track of who created it.
Yeah.
It keeps track of what business unit that record was created,
Okay.
right? So if you are now restricting access based on business units, that will mean you are able to separate the data. So even though all the data are coming within the same table, you
Mm-hmm.
can still no, you can still handle, who can see what. So we could potentially be looking at the same table, but be seeing different data. So that's the idea of business unit. So you can set it up, and maybe within sales, there could be maybe high ticket sales as a business unit. There could be common sales as another business unit on that sales. So you can set it up as a form of a tree view.
Okay.
So with business unit security, you can now decide and say, okay, I want people in BU1 to be able to see records in BU1 and to be able to see records of people, in BU 1.1 and BU 1.1.1, right? You can start setting those kind of models up, and that's using your security rules,
Okay.
which we've looked at a little bit. And that also leads us into security rules, right? That's where you set up what's privilege. So do you want, in some cases, for delete, you want only admins to be able to delete, right? So for the admin role, you can set delete to organization. So meaning an admin will be able to delete record for anybody. And if you set delete to business units, what do you think will happen? So if I have a delete privilege and I set it to business unit level, what do you think is going to happen? How do you think that's going to work? Anybody?
Means the business unit that the delete is sort of like registered so they can delete records.
Yeah, yeah. So basically, what it means is that you'll be able to delete
Yeah.
records by anybody within your business unit,
Yeah.
but not outside your business units because I've set it to
Yeah.
business units level. So if both of us are in the same business unit, I'll be able to delete your record. Maybe we are both in sales, I'll be able to delete your record. But somebody in IT, I won't be
Yeah.
able to delete their record because they are not in my business unit. But if instead of setting it to business unit, I set it to organization, that means you are, um,
Okay.
anywhere you are in relation to that table, I'll be able to delete your record irrespective of your business unit.
Yeah.
We'll still see this in practice once we get to the interface.
Okay.
Um, we also have column level security, and that's a way of, within a table you can have multiple columns. So, but some columns are sensitive. So look at an HR solution, and HR doesn't like people to know other people's salary,
Yeah.
right? And maybe you're building an application and that is using one of the HR tables that has people's salaries. But you still want other people to be able to use this table. You still want other people to be able to see other columns within the same table, but
Yeah.
just not that salary table.
Yeah.
If you want to do that, you'll be setting up a column level security. In some other materials, you will see it being called a field security profile because that was the former name. In this world, just get used to changing names because they change names all the time. So now it's called column level security. Before it was called field security profile. So they're both the same thing. So
So guys,
with that, yeah, go on.
it's not possible. So that no now for view. So using the instance of
Yeah.
the HR department, the salary column, and only the maybe HR business units can
Mm-hmm.
see that column. But it's not possible. Rather than making it like a column level security, is it possible to make it sort of like a business unit for view where it's only HR that can see a particular column?
Yeah, that's a good question because you can have multiple views, right?
Yeah,
So what you're saying is why not just create a custom view for HR
HR, yes.
and HR will be able to see it. Then for other people, you have another view that's,
Yeah.
yeah, that's a very good question. And it takes you to think about security because there's a way you can do security that can be circumvented. And what you've said just now is one. Visually, it looks fine, right? Okay, well,
Mm,
in my application, I've been able to prevent that. But what if the user goes to the actual table? Because he has access to
mm,
the record,
because yeah,
you get, if he has a way of going to the table and he's going to see the data, or if
yeah,
he's tech savvy and he goes and creates an app and he just adds the column
adds
that
to
you've removed.
yeah.
right, is going to be able to see that data. And you run into issues like that when you're doing SharePoint stuff because SharePoint doesn't have a detailed security model.
Mm,
So SharePoint, when we build applications, we just try to pray that the users don't get the link to the application to the SharePoint data source because a lot of things will go wrong. And in a previous organization, there are like some scripts that they run to just hide it, even though technically, if the user still gets the link, the user will be able to see all the data. So you can build a SharePoint stuff and on the app, you're putting all the filters,
yeah.
but if the user gets to the data source, your app is not there to control him anymore. So they
Wow.
can do whatever they want. So that was what will happen if you don't do a column level security.
Mm,
One thing about model driven apps in general, even though a data source hasn't been added to your app, you can, as long as you have data to it, the way model driven app and Dataverse thinks is as long as you have the access. One thing is at the data layer, it will make sure it doesn't show you whatever you don't have access to.
mm,
But if you are tech savvy, you can get to see everything you have access to. So so even though the form itself has only two fields,
two fields, yeah.
if you are savvy enough, you
You
can
can see
still
the
find
details.
all the other fields that you have access to.
Yeah, okay.
So
That's
that's
some
why,
high people roots.
yeah, yeah. So this is just a way of making sure that,
Okay.
Dataverse itself will say, oh, this user doesn't have access to this. So any way the user is trying to get that information, Dataverse is going to restrict it and say, you don't have access to this. So I'm not going to show it to you.
Mm.
So that's the idea
Sorry,
of, yeah, go on.
missed some of that, but what I get from the sense of what you're saying is this security model building blocks, right? So when you have you are able to divide them into business units and teams, and all. There are
Mm-hmm.
two ways to approach this security thing. So
Mm-hmm.
one can be circumvented, and the other one is now this one you're talking about. Is that right?
Yes, yes. So
So which one
because um
circumvented?
f- yeah, so Farouk asked the question that, instead of setting up a column level security, why not just create a view that doesn't have that column and give it to every other person? And the view that has the salary, we show it to HR alone. So
Hmm.
then I said on the application level, that is fine because HR we only see what HR is supposed to be, others we see what they're supposed to be. But because from the data level, there is no restriction. So that user that, even though you're not showing him the view, if he's savvy enough, he can still he can still find that data because he has access to the data. So if there's a sensitive column that you want to decide who can see data in that column, what you should do is set up a column level security because that will apply the restriction at the data level. And that's one of the advantages of Dataverse because you can do a lot of things at the data level. And once it's at the data level, then it applies any way the user is trying to access it. Do you get that?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. We also have access teams. Now, access teams is kind of like teams, which is, like a group of users. But generally, the idea of access teams is more flexible, is more dynamic in the sense that maybe let's say you use a project application, for example, every project is going to have different team members, right? So when setting up something like that, it can be useful to set up an access team for that because on the record, one reason why we have teams is you can use teams to grant access to data. And the advantage of doing that is if so maybe there's this data set that has like a list of books, for example, right? And I'm in the library team. Now in the library team, I have access to all those records. If I leave the library team and go into another team, maybe the security team, I don't need those assets again. And what's going to happen is because the security role has been attached to the teams, if I move to another team, then I lose access to all of those books. So that's also another thing to think about when you're setting up security, because you can attach security roles to users and you can attach security roles to teams. Do you get? So if I attach that book security role, if I attach it to a user, anywhere the user goes, it still maintains the access,
Mm-hmm.
which can be a security risk,
Yeah.
right? So that's why a lot of times you want to think of teams. Set up a team and it's easier to manage. And when somebody leaves the organization, if a new person is added to the team,
Mm-hmm.
automatically that user gets access to all the records that have been submitted before. But if it is a user level, they will not have access to the old records. Maybe they will just start having access to the new ones. So those are things to think of when setting up security. It's always good to set up your teams and share your security roles with the teams rather than individual users. That
In,
makes it easy to manage
and
security.
in real life scenario,
Yeah.
maybe like when you do like requirement gathering and with like maybe the customer or clients, would
Mm-hmm.
they sort of give you an existing how they want their access security to be modeled, or is it based on you as an expert that will tell them, okay, do this always? They're like, what sort of how do you strike the balance? Get what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because obviously,
So
because you're new, you don't know what they do. You don't really know
yeah,
how they have
yeah.
their yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question. So from experience, when doing discovery, one of the first things that we try to get is what are the user roles? So who are the stakeholders? And stakeholders mean, whoever gets to interact with the process. So even not just the application, who are the people involved in this process? So when we have a list of the stakeholders, then we can now say, okay, what do we need these stakeholders to do? Based on that, we start to model the security.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's in every solution, there is that mix of working together with the clients, right? And some clients are savvy. Some clients will come with like a proper document with
Yeah.
everything they want. And some will just come and say, well, I just have this idea I want to build out. So depending on, what kind of clients they are, you now start figuring out what those things need to be. But the first thing is to identify the user roles. Once you identify the user roles, then you now start saying, okay, how much access do I want each of them to have? So that's something you can do as a consultant, and that's something the client can provide. And at the end of the day, whatever you put together as a consultant, you still present it to the client and say, okay, are you happy with this? Once you get that, then you can go ahead and start doing the implementation. So, but yeah, security is one thing you don't want to miss because there's there's a lot of litigation that can go off the back of that. So yeah.
So I guess all these all these things listed here, the
Mm,
building blocks, you can combine and use all of them at once.
yeah.
And then let's say scenario where one of the building blocks is true, but the other one is false, then
Mm,
turns out that whoever that applies to will not be able to get that uh, uh, pass that
mm.
security check.
Yeah, I like where your head's at. So there's the thing about combining, right? Now, when combining security, what Dataverse does is it applies the most restrictive security you have. So maybe I have two security roles. One gives me access to record A, and another one says I don't have access to record B to record A. Now, it now becomes a question that what now happens if I try to access the record? Basically you won't be able to access the record, even though one has given you access, but because you still have another one applying a restriction, Dataverse is going to apply the most restrictive security you have. So that's another thing to know. So because sometimes some users can just say, "Oh, I can't see the data," and you will get this to when you're doing your exams. So when you're taking your PL 200 exams, yes, there are some scenario questions like that they tell you that, users in the IT team, they say they can't see the data. Why? They've complained that they can't see the data. Why could this have happened? Then they give you different options, right? So usually what Dataverse does is it applies the most restrictive security you have. So if one is giving you access and that one is taking it away, then that access is not going to be there. So in such a cases, you want to look for, what's the most restrictive one and take it away. And once you do that, they can start having the access again. So yeah, yep. So that's that. So access team is more dynamic, is not fixed. So if you look at sales team, for example, a sales team is more or less fixed, except maybe when the users are like changing roles or changing organizations. But access teams is more dynamic. So it's more, let's say we put together a team for a particular project. Once the project is over, then that team doesn't need to exist again. Right. So in such cases, you'll be thinking of access teams. We also have hierarchy security. There's two types of
Sorry, one more
hierarchy.
question about
Yeah,
these access teams.
yeah,
So many times um, in organizations, you already
yeah.
have like a security, components in the architecture
Mm-hmm.
that's already present, depending on the enterprise solution or the system that they're using for that organization, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So let's say they are not using a Microsoft uh, enterprise solution
yeah,
across board, but along the lines, they've now tried to integrate Power Apps for
yeah.
something quickly. So they've integrated Power Apps, and so now we have access teams,
Mm-hmm.
right? But already on the surface level of their security architecture, they already have like their different teams. They have HR teams. They've set all those
Yeah,
role-based security and all
yeah.
those things. Now, where does the how is the Power Apps, right? The Power Platform, how is it able to identify is it able to identify the already existing security architecture that they have there that say,
Mm.
oh, this is admin, this is HR, this
Yeah,
is finance, right? Is
yeah.
the Power Platform able to just, based on the integration, recognize
Mm.
that oh, anybody that has this login based on the security that has been set with the existing architecture
Yeah.
is in finance, or do you still have to partition all those things from
Okay.
inside the Power Apps?
Yeah, that's a good question too. So basically, when setting up teams, so even in this case, you're not even talking about access teams, you're talking about actual teams. So my Power Apps or Power Platform, the security model, you can model it also after your Entra ID setup. So in this case, all of those things are going to be set up on Entra ID. And Entra ID used to be called what? That interestingly, I can't even
Is it the
remember.
Azure?
Yeah, yeah, Azure Security, yeah, whatever. So, but now it's called Entra ID. So let's just be happy with that. So, but it used to be called something else before. But that's changed. So do you know Entra ID, Tosin? Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean by aha? So all of that is going to be set up on Entra ID. So the teams, who the user is, what teams the user belongs to, what groups the user belongs to. All of that will be set up on Entra ID. Now, when creating a team within the Power Platform, so you still it's not automatic. You still decide on what teams you want to create because in realistic terms there will be loads of teams in Entra ID, right? And within the Power Platform, especially in the context of the solution you're building, you maybe don't need everything, you just need some. So when creating a team in the Power Platform, you can create it based on a Microsoft Entra ID group. So, and it's going to ask you, you can use a Office 365 group or Entra ID group. Now, so you'll be putting the group email, and what's going to happen is any user that gets added to that group from Office 365 or from Entra ID, automatically they sync into the Power Platform. So it takes away that admin thing. So it's not like you have to change it in Entra ID and come back to Power Platform and change it again. Once you create a team based on an ID group or a security group, then you kind of mirror that setup. So when you are integrating for an organization that has a security setup already, all of that, the actual setup is not going to be on the Power Platform. It's going to be on Entra ID. So all of that will be set up on Entra ID. Then based on the groups in Entra ID, you can now create your teams. Do you get?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And we'll
It's not.
see.
It's not as if you cannot do it within Power Platform itself. It just takes a bit longer to do it.
Exactly. Yes, and that's a good point too, because you can create a team on the Power Platform that is not talking to Entra ID at all. So you are just going to say, okay, these users, I want to create them as a team within the Power Platform. But when you're looking at scalability, right, it's always better to do it from the Entra ID. So from once they're set up over there, then it makes it easy to maintain. And at that point, it's like IT that gets to maintain it. And as users are coming to the organization and leaving the organization, once they update it there, it just updates on the Power Platform. So that's a better setup. Okay. And so I was talking about hierarchy. So hierarchy, we have two types. There's positional hierarchy and positional and well, maybe security, but we will get there. Positional and okay, I think there's positional. So positional is so for the positional hierarchy, as you're adding users to organization, you can set up different positions, maybe manager, maybe team member, right? So you can set those things up and you decide and say, okay, I want managers to be able to see data for team members. So you can, yeah. I was hearing some voices. Are you talking to me?
Yeah, sorry, it's PWS speaking to me. I'm gonna mute my mic now.
Okay. All right. So we can set up hierarchy security, and the idea is so it's kind of like a tree like this too. Whoever is at the top of the hierarchy can see and manage data for people that are underneath in the hierarchy. We'll see more of this as we proceed. So this is showing us the ways of like an example of how you set up a business unit, right? So remember we have the root business unit, which is which is like the company, right? So you can give it a name and say, okay, this is the name of the company. And you have sales team as a business unit. And with that, you are able to separate data. So once you do business unit access, somebody in customer service will not be able to see data for people in sales.
Mm-hmm.
So look at accounts. There's a table. Remember when we went through the out of the box table?
Yeah.
There's a table called accounts,
Yes.
right? A sales application is going to need accounts. A customer service application is going to need accounts, right? But what if we want to separate that data? Maybe we don't want sales people to be able to see the accounts created by people in customer service, and we don't want customer service to see the accounts created by people in sales. So even though they are both submitting to the same table,
Yeah.
we can use business unit security to separate what they can see. So in that case, what we are going to do is the access level, we'll set it to business unit, right?
Yeah.
So that's going to provide that separation. So it allows you to set up security boundaries, right, for users and teams to access and privileges to organization data. So they could be using the same tables, but they get to see different data based on your setup. So security roles, and there are some standard security roles. There are some default security roles. We will review them, and these are stuff that Microsoft has said, okay, somebody who is a system admin, these are the kind of security roles they should have. Somebody who is a basic user, these are the kind of security roles they should have. So Microsoft has set all of that up. And but when you are creating a table, a new table, that your new table is not covered by the standard ones. That's where you now get to create custom security roles. Do you get?
Mhm.
And the general idea of a custom security role is you mirror it after an existing standard security role. So maybe you are trying to create a basic user security role for your application. What you can do is you go to the standard role, basic user, you create a copy of that,
Yeah.
then you add in your table, whatever, however you want it to be for your table. For
Mm.
this new table you've created, you add that in. So once you do that, then you use that instead of the basic one because the standard ones that Microsoft has created doesn't capture the new tables you are going to create yourself. Do you get that?
Yeah.
So instead of starting from a blank slate, you can start from one of the standard ones. Then you just tweak it to suit
So the standard
your
ones,
table.
in standard ones, do we have, I don't know this question, do we have different standard ones or just the exact and like a template, or we have different type of security roles already as defaults, or is it like a template where you can just copy and paste? Do you get what I mean?
So maybe, but there are different ones. But one other thing about the standard ones is you cannot edit them.
Okay.
So you cannot edit them. So ideally, maybe you would just add your tables to those ones, right?
Those ones, yeah.
But because those ones are already being applied to some Dataverse entities already, right? So Microsoft doesn't allow you to edit them, but Microsoft allows you to copy them.
Copy
So you
them,
can
but
copy
yeah,
them, then
implement.
customize,
Yeah.
you can customize it, add the additional stuff you want to them. So that's the idea of copying role and default security rules, which we're going to see too as we get into building our model driven app.
Sorry,
And
are you talking about like tables that were already built in um, Power Platform? Like take for instance in the first video that I just finished watching,
yeah,
you have like accounts. You really use that one. Are you talking about those ones? They already
e-
have their own standard security rules.
exactly, yes. So the standard security rules already cover those out of the box tables created by Microsoft, the ones you get to meet there. So,
Mm-hmm.
but once you create a new table, which would be what's going to happen in most cases, right? In most cases, you're going to be creating a new table to build your own custom solution. And your new table might use some of those existing data stuff. You might use some of those existing ones too. So once you create a new table, instead of now using the existing one, you can now say, okay, I'm creating a custom one, and I get to decide how I want the users to how much access I want them to have to the different privileges on that table. So we'll see it. There's no point of trying to understand it in con concept. Once we get into the actual application, we'll see it's quite straightforward. Security is one thing that from the onset it was very hazy. I didn't understand it at all. Even when I started training, I think
Yeah.
it was even when I started training, I got to understand it much more. Because then I had to like do it. But if you're not doing it, all of these things they don't make sense. But once you're doing it, it's like, oh, it's quite straightforward. So there's no point of us trying to theoretically understand it.
That's all
Once we
right.
get
Yeah.
into the application, we'll
Okay.
understand it much better. So these are some of the most common out of the box ones. There's so many. There's so many out of the box security rules, but I'll say these ones on the screen are the only ones I've interacted with. So, and that's because, as I said, all of those other ones they're already being used by Dataverse for some other aspects of Dataverse, right? So the way the Power Platform Dataverse is like you are not the first person to get there. They are already using it for stuff because remember I told you the history, right? They bought the solution, they've used it to build dynamics, and they were like, oh, what if we just make others also use this same platform to build new stuff, right? So that's why there's already a lot of out of the box stuff, which and one thing that is interesting is even the way dynamics is with Dataverse, you can actually build your own dynamics. So because it's literally the same platform,
Yeah.
so you can build your own dynamics. So they just thought that, well, instead of us building this alone, how about we just sell it and let people also build new stuff with the same platform? So there's a lot of other security roles there, but we have the system administrator. Now, the system administrator gives. Oh, we've not had any break. We'll probably have a break. We'll have a break soon, maybe. So the system administrator bring gives the is sysadmin. Sysadmin is like God mode of Power Platform because you can't hide any data from sysadmin. So even all of those column security profiles, all of those kind of things is visible to the system admin, and there's no way of restricting that. We did a health check for an organization, and literally almost all their users had sysadmin, which is not good at all. And sysadmin can do anything on the Power Platform. They can delete anything. They can create anything. They can do anything. They can add new people. They can add new environments. They can do whatever. They can give other people sysadmin too. Um, so that's system administrator is like and when applying security models, you are always advised to give people the least amount of access they need to do what they have to do, right? You don't want to give them more because the more they have, the more responsible they need to be. But if somebody just needs to run an application, you don't need to give them sysadmin. Just give them what they need to do their jobs, right? And if they're not having issues, you can start talking of, what's the next level up that they need to get to. So the lazy way is just give everybody sysadmin and nobody will ever complain about access. I think that was what happened there. Everybody had sysadmin, then maybe somebody was now like, oh, this is wrong. And the person now started changing it, and
Yeah.
everybody started complaining that we can't see our data, we can't see.
Wow.
And that's because they didn't set up the security model in the right place. And because everybody had sysadmin, they could see everything. But once they took sysadmin away, then
Like what's
nobody could see anything again. And in that case, you now need to do a proper discovery to find out, what kind of security should have been in place in the first place. Now, system customizer really comes into place, especially in an environment that has Dataverse. System customizer allows you to see your own data in Dataverse across all the tables, and it allows you to be able to customize the environment. So you can create apps, you can create components, you can do those things with the system customizer role. Even interestingly, this last week I still did something wrong. Some people just needed to be able to run apps, by added security customize system customizer role for them. They were happy and they went away, but I've been thinking a lot. I still have to, maybe this weekend, or I'll prefer it this weekend because I don't want them to know that I messed with it. So maybe this weekend I'll have to go back there and, bring it down. So you want to give them only what they need. We have Environment Maker. So Environment Maker allows them to make apps, to make automation and all of that. But if the environment has Dataverse, they will also need system customizer. Do you get? So that's the difference between environment maker and system customizer. system customizer comes into place for an environment that has Dataverse. If they gave them only environment maker, they won't be able to do anything in an environment that has Dataverse, so they need both. But if it doesn't have Dataverse, they'll be fine with environment maker to create apps, flows, and things like that. Do we get that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, basic user formerly used to be called Dataverse user. Now, basic user comes into place for an environment that has Dataverse. So basic user is just giving them enough access. So it's just like system customizer, right? So for an environment that has Dataverse, for them to be able to use apps, they need basic user. So this scenario I was saying, instead of giving them system customizer, I should have given them basic user, right? So that will allow them to be able to run apps, but not to customize the system. So that was the mistake I made there. Then we have app opener. App opener comes into place for an environment that doesn't have Dataverse. So that will just give them enough to use applications. But if it has Dataverse, they would need basic user. So do you get the difference there? This
Yeah.
simple explanation I gave you, like I'm sure if I go on the Microsoft documentation page for this thing, they probably know my name now because I've visited that page so much just to understand it, just to understand what the difference are. Like, and I know a lot of people that struggle on this, and this is very common in the exam to see questions that has to do with system administration, system customizer, environment maker, basic user. Just this simple explanation I gave you, there are questions that usually try to test your understanding of, when do you need each of these security roles. And remember, I said, they could present a scenario and say, oh, everybody can see data. How can you make this better? We only need some people to build apps and some people to use the apps. The environment has Dataverse. What security role should be assigned to who? So you'll be seeing questions like that in your exam. So it's important to understand what the difference are. Good, we have the recording so you can visit it again, especially once you start doing some exam preparation. Okay, and we can see it here. It says system administrator has full permission and the most access to data and configuration. System customizer has full access to all custom tables and row level privilege for some variety, right? Environment maker can create new resources associated with an environment. Okay. Um, so this
Sorry,
is
can I?
1054. Yes, go on. Go on.
I think he's muted. I think he
Oh,
was.
oh, okay.
Oh,
So
oh,
because
how come I was muted? And so,
Oh,
but you heard me.
I
yeah, I
heard
Yeah.
the
heard you
first
for a
part,
minute and then
then
you
it
got
went
muted.
off.
Oh, okay. So yeah, can you go back to the last slide?
Okay.
So I guess the system administrator will be like the person that has built the environment and solution and everything else. For the system customizer, if the administrator is giving access and it puts someone as a customizer, that customizer cannot change the data that's in that environment. They can only, I don't understand, they can only
Yeah,
add.
that's a good point. Yeah. So with system customizer, the idea, I think the thinking behind that is you want to be able to, build an app and you want to be able to test what you're building. Do you get? So imagine you're building an app and you don't have access to the tables. You can't submit data, then you won't be able to do your job properly. Right. So that's why it gives you a user level access to the tables. So such that I'm able to see just my data. Do you get?
Yeah.
I'm able to see the data that I create at with the system's customizer role so that I can actually test what I'm building.
So are they also able to make their own environment?
Make their own environments? No. So that would be like a system administrator thing.
Okay, so the customizer only operates within an environment that was created by the system administrator.
Well, the system administrator doesn't even have to be the one that created the environment. It just needs to be a system administrator. So you can have multiple system administrators, but it's always good to provide that to just very few people. Do you get, because of the level of control the system administrator has. So you want to restrict that to the smallest amount of people. But yes, they can do the most. System customizer, the idea of it is like somebody at a developer level for him to have enough to do his job. So that's what the system customizer will be.
So for the systems customizer, so they have access to their own more like
Their own records.
Are they able to then, if they're then done testing, are they able to like push, like make other users use the app?
Oh yes, yes, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And will they be
So
able to set security, rule-based security for what the app they have developed?
yeah, I believe so. Yes, system customizer will be able to do that. So system administrator is not really to do so many things. I think most of the stuff is on the system customizer. Yet you can custom. I'll send the documentation so that I can torment you guys with the page too. Because that page has really tormented me, to be honest. So I'll find the documentation and send it to well, yeah. My browser even remembers the page. Okay, so yeah, I was going to say let's go on a 15 minutes break. So this is 10, let's just say this is 11. So we can continue by 11:15, if that's okay.
That's cool.
Yeah.
All right,
Thanks.
cheers.
Yeah, see you soon.
Are we back?
Yep.
Awesome.
Hi, Kayode.
Okay, awesome, awesome, cool. I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
Awesome, cool. All right, yeah. So moving on, yeah. Um, so we've talked about the security roles, some of the standard ones. I've put the link to the documentation in the chat, so you can have a read. It's a good read. I think they've even made it easier to understand, especially with this conversation we've had now. You probably it's all going to make sense anyway. Um, Now when you're adding users to an environment, some things need to be in place for a user to be added to an environment. First of all, the user needs to exist in your tenant, right? It needs to be a valid user. The user needs to have the right license for them to be added to an environment. And a third optional one is when creating an environment, you have the option to specify a security group. Now, if the environment has a security group, that user needs to be a part of that security group for them to access the environment. One thing I did recently was there was like a group of developers, like external developers that wanted to build something for our company, and they needed an environment. So first of all, I asked IT to create a custom security group, and when creating the environment, I made sure that I restricted the environment to only those users within the security group, right? So what's going to happen in that case is, you know, that list of environments that you can switch around in Power Apps. Um, you will only see environments you have access to there. So by restricting an environment to a security group, that means people that are not in that security group will not see that environment as an option. Do you get? So that's why you may want to do that. So those things need to be in place for a user to be added to an environment. Um,
And is
so
that what you did for my sorry, for my apps? Because the only thing I can see is just my environment. That's all.
um, so your environment is a developer environment.
Okay.
So that means that yeah, you're just getting that for
Myself.
yourself. Yeah.
Myself.
So
Okay.
it's a developer environment. Is a bit different. You'll probably get the default environment too anyway. So you should have the default and just yours. I think Tosin's account when I set it up at first, I gave him like the Power Platform admin and you could see everything. Tosin, I hope you cannot see everything anymore. So you can help me check. I think I adjusted it. I hope so. So yeah, you can restrict it. I don't think we have
Yeah.
so many
It's been
environments.
restricted.
Okay, cool. I don't think we have so many environments that are restricted to that, but what we just have is developer environment. So ideally, only you will see your developer environment. So it kind of applies that restriction by itself. And this is security roles, which we touched in previous classes and we've actually talked about today. Um, I think it looks a bit different from this now. So we'll see the updated look. But basically, when we're talking about privileges, privileges refer to create, read, write, delete, append to, assign, share. So these are different privileges. So for each privilege, we can decide what level of access. So down here, we have the levels of access. It can either be none. If it's none, that means they don't have access to that privilege. If it is user, they can perform that privilege for only themselves. If it's business units, they can perform that business unit for themselves and for other users in the same business unit. If it is parent-child business units, they can perform it for themselves, for people in their business units, and for people in business units under them. If it is organization, they can perform it for all records, right? And over here, we see entity. Entity is the same thing as tables. We see different tables. So for each table that exists, you can decide how much access a particular role has. So account manager, you might want him to be able to delete some stuff, but maybe just is somebody who is just a user, you might just give him user level so they can delete mistakes they make. So that's the idea of security roles. This one is showing us that, for the out of the box ones, you can see you cannot adjust it. So all you can do is create a copy, so you can create a copy of that role, then customize it as you please. So
Hey, sorry,
privileges, yeah.
to that table.
Okay. This one?
No, the one before this.
Yeah.
Thank you. So I'm trying to understand that's why. So the security role here that we're trying
Yeah.
to is the account manager.
Yeah.
Okay. And these are the entity are the list of tables that we have.
Yeah, so you see all the tables, and it's not just tables. So if you look at the top here, you can see this is like different tabs.
Okay.
So there's a tab for core records. Core records are like the out of the box tables,
Yeah.
right? So you can see all of that.
Okay.
I think you can see we have marketing. I think this environment has like dynamics, right? So you can see marketing. So for the marketing stuff, you can see different tables that have to do with marketing over there. You can decide. So it's quite detailed. That's why they recommend that instead of starting from a blank slate, how about you create a copy of the existing one and you customize that, because there's so many things to configure. Do you get?
Okay. So for like now an example, there's this one called correction.
Okay.
Just below category correction.
Yeah. Connection.
Okay. Connection. Oh, okay. Connection. And it is that user or business units? I can't say clearly. Just want to be sure.
Which
For
one is
create,
it?
for
For
the create.
create, that's
Yeah.
user.
So
Oh,
that's
that's true.
user.
Is a big is no, that's business unit actually.
That's
Yeah.
business units. Okay. So what does this mean in relation to the account manager role, to them creating this correction table? I'm trying to
So that
understand.
yeah, so when it comes to create, that means all the records they create can be, or all the connections they create, or all
Yeah.
the records they create in the connection
Connection.
table
Yeah.
can be viewed by users within their business unit.
These are data business units. That means you have to. Okay. So this role now, is it linked to a business unit already?
No. So security roles are set up on their own.
No.
Then you can now link it. Do you get? You can now link it to, you can assign it to a team. You can
Okay.
assign it to a user.
Yeah.
I think you can assign it to business units too.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
So these are the privileges, these are the access levels, which we've talked about. So there are different ways of setting up. So for every user, you can decide what security roles they have access to, and you can do the same for teams. You can decide what security roles you assign to them. Now, in terms of a user is, it seems like they don't have access to something and all of that. You can do like a run diagnosis for the admin center to check the access level the user has. So that can be a way of finding out why a user cannot view a record. Do you get? And every user assigned to an environment must have at least one security role. So while adding the user, you have the option to, set that up. So the user must have at least one security role, or they are in a team that has a security role. Do you
Zero.
get?
Yeah.
So you can't have a user in an environment that doesn't have
Any
any.
security role must be assigned
So
to something.
yeah, and so is it that directly or indirectly? Do you
Okay. Yeah.
get? Okay. And yeah, model driven app too. They give you the option to do like an access checker. We've talked about teams. Teams are groups of users that work together, either consistently or maybe temporarily, and that's where access team comes in when it's like temporary. So we have owner teams and we have access teams. Owner teams are more like the standard kind of teams. They are actually the more common kind of teams. So owner teams, the roles are owned by the groups of users instead of the individual user, right? So that's where what I talked about in terms of when a user leaves. When a user leaves the team, he no longer has access. Then while designing, the members of the teams. So just like marketing, do you get, these
Yeah.
are set groups of users,
Yeah.
unlike a project where a project could have different sets of users, right? That's where you start thinking of access teams. You can assign security roles to the team. You can report on progress by team. Reporting on progress by teams is required. So these are just some things to think of when deciding whether the team is going to be an owner team. For the access teams, they're kind of dynamically formed, dynamically dissolved. You you can't really set the team members ahead. Um, Now, different members of the team could have different levels of access. Then some users require access to a single role without requiring ownership. So, and an example of this sometimes is when maybe when you're doing something and maybe legal team should have like an oversight, but basically you don't want them to have access to the record. So it's not like you're sharing the record with them, but they just need to be able to collaborate on the record. So that's where access team comes into place. Access team cannot have security rules assigned to them. That's another thing about access teams. They cannot have security rules assigned to them, and they cannot own the records. So it's you share the record with the access team. Then so it access team is a bit hazy. It's not really something I've worked with so much. It's a bit hazy. But the idea behind access team is you cannot assign a security role to them. So rather the records are more or less shared with the access team, and it's just for the time when they are collaborating on the record. I think once we start building, we would look into it a little bit more. And
Sorry,
which, yeah,
sorry, I missed some of that. But you just summarize again difference
okay,
between
yeah,
owner teams and access teams. Really
yeah.
sorry.
So access owner teams basically they're the kind of, so when you're doing like an environment setup, you'll be doing like a lot of um owner team setup. So owner teams they're more structured, they are known from the onset in terms of like things like marketing. You're able to say, okay, these are the members of marketing, these are the members of IT. So you set all of those things up, and you can grant security roles to um access team, to owner teams. I mean, you can assign security roles to them. But when it comes to access teams, it's more dynamic, and you don't the when it comes to access teams, it's dynamically formed. We would still get to it because there's something called access teams templates, which would give us more understanding of access teams. So you kind of set up a template, and at the time the team is needed, you'll be sharing the record with the access team. And that's how the members are going to have access. But the members themselves don't have like a direct access to the record. So
Yeah, thanks.
now, I talked about the idea of creating a team based on a Microsoft Entra ID group. So when you do that, the setup is quite similar to an owner team, and you can share record, you can share security, you can add security roles to such teams, and you'll be able to use them just the way you use a an owner team within Dataverse. Column security profile. This one, I'm not going to talk too much about it because we'll do it on the interface and we'll understand it better. But the idea is, with that, you get to restrict data to certain position, to certain fields or columns. Now, I was talking about hierarchy. I said positional hierarchy. The other one is manager hierarchy. So you can set up like a form of a tree. So both of them is, hierarchy, right? Hierarchy is like a tree setup. So where there's somebody at the top and there are others underneath. So you can decide whether you want to use a manager hierarchy or whether you want to use a position hierarchy. And that will determine whether, a manager can see access to some people that are underneath them, or whether a CEO can see access to data that is submitted by people underneath them. And you can decide not to use hierarchy security at all, right? So you remember I said you can stack them up, and you can decide not to use some of them. So hierarchy security, you can decide whether to use it or not, and we'll see an example of how we set it up too. So let's go into the interface and see some of these things. So here you go to make.powerapps.com. Once you're here, let me know.
Yep.
Okay. About to say, are you able to follow?
Sorry, just give me 5 seconds.
Okay.
So you want us to follow from the Power Apps, yeah?
Yeah, so you go to powerapps.com, make.powerapps.com.
Yeah, it's just a screen. Sharing screen. Sorry, partitioning screen.
Uh-huh.
Very big. Okay, so let's make it plan.
Okay. So I guess we're on the same page now. So
Yeah.
from here, we won't go to the admin center. We'll look at some other admin things very soon. But here we'll be going to the admin center. One way of doing it is to go to make.powerapps.com. Then from here, you click on the gear icon and click on admin center. So that's one way of going. Another way is just to go to admin.powerplatform.com. Or is it powerplatform.microsoft.com? Yeah. So admin.powerplatform.microsoft.com. So you can either do that or just go to admin center from there. Okay, are we on the same page?
Yeah.
All right. So Microsoft recently,
Yours have a few things that mine doesn't have. This might
yeah. So I was going to say Microsoft recently redesigned the admin center, so you should see a toggle up here.
Yeah.
So you can turn on the new admin center. Let's get used to the new stuff.
Yeah. Wow.
It's asking for feedback. I'll just click
Yeah,
feedback.
just ignore that. Okay. Are we on the same page?
Yeah.
Cool.
You've not toggled off your own.
No, I'm not. I mean, toggle it on if it's off for you.
Oh, right. Yeah.
All right, cool. So for the new setup, I don't know which one do I like. I kind of like the new one, to be fair. It's almost it's it seems more finer, and at least these icons are bigger.
There's a
And
dark mode. Dark mode is really nice.
uh I don't know. Lately, I've not been so much a fan of dark mode, and I wonder why. I had to switch my PC. My PC was dark mode before, and I had to switch it
Okay.
over.
You get tired of it at some point.
Yeah, that is very strange to me because I loved dark mode before, but I don't know. I think I'm not sure, but I'm suspecting it's because I changed the orientation of my table.
Oh.
But I'm not sure. I'm quite closer to the window now, so I feel like it's maybe it's up. I don't know, to be honest. But
Just get bored of it.
oh yeah, I'm back on light mode. So cool. Yeah, so this is it. I think I like this, and it feels like, well, I've not really seen so much new stuff, but it's quite good. I think especially when it comes to admin things, it's quite easier to get what you're looking for. So this is just the home. Not too much to do here. There's like an actions tab, which is it just gives you like some recommendations, some security settings, which is quite good. Like some suggestions of what you can do to make your security health of the tenants better.
Sorry,
And man,
no,
well,
I have a question. Sorry.
yeah,
See, when we went to make the powerapps.com and we came to the admin center from there,
yeah.
and it's like, if for how like so, is this like only for developers or system administrators that can come here, or can other users too
That's
come
a
here?
good that's a good question. That's a very good question. Um, so I think they kind of allow you need to be some form of admin. Okay, well, you will see your environment. So if you have a developer environment, you will see that, which I guess you can. So
Yeah.
if you come to environment here under manage, you can see your environment, right?
Yes. Just my
Exactly, because what that developer environment does, it's there's a Power Platform admin, which is this admin center is really for the Power Platform admin. Do you get?
Mhm.
But for the for developer environments, it kind of gives you that Power Platform admin
Yeah.
role within the context of that environment. So you are
Okay.
able to administer
Minister.
that
Okay.
environment. So that's why you can see that. But ideally, it's the Power Platform admins that can
I can come
mess
here.
with stuff
Yeah.
here. Yeah,
Mhm.
that's a good question. Hold on. Cool. So you can see a list of environments. So if you want to create a new environment, you do it here. You want to delete environments, you do it here. Here you get to manage your environment basically. There's something called environment groups that is quite recent.
Oh, I'm
The old
sorry, I'm not seeing
yeah.
all these things that you are saying. When I go to manage, there's
Let me share your
environments.
screen.
All these tables don't even come up.
Let me share
Yeah,
your
I
Um,
don't
screen.
have environment groups and tenant setting. Me
Okay,
too.
well, yeah, so that would be because you're not a Power Platform admin. So it's kind of giving you stuff that has to do with just your environment alone.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would like to
can you see my
see
screen?
what that is. Yes, I can see your screen. Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, it has the
That
same thing
makes a
I
lot of
have.
sense. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, yeah, no worries at all. Anyway, um, I'm gonna share my screen. Cool. So environment groups quite recent, and the whole idea of environment groups is you can group some certain environments together. So maybe you have like different environments for USA, different environment for China. You can put all the USA environments. Maybe USA has dev, test, prod environment, right? You can put all of that within a group and say this is a USA environment, these are China environments. All of that is just like a visual thing. There's not too much. But when it comes to security, you can easily manage security for US groups, and whatever security stuff you are doing there will affect only US groups, right? So that's that. For your tenants, so because I'm a Power Platform admin, I can set up, like, I can do tenant settings. So different things around my tenants, I can provide restriction. So things like trial environment assignments, maybe you want to make sure that only specific people can do that, right? Or maybe creating a developer environment. You want to make sure only specific people can do that. So you can you can control some tenant wide settings over here. When it comes to data, well, this talking about on-premise data gateway. Nothing to worry about that. The idea of on-premise data gateways basically is that if you have like on-premise setup, so maybe that organization has like servers and that's where their data is, and you want to use that data in the cloud, you'll be setting up a data gateway, and that's how Power Platform can use the data. And this one just different products here, nothing to worry about. Um, let's see, where else do I want to go to? Licensing is
Sorry,
also
but you
interesting.
say
Yeah,
it's
go on.
okay that we don't have all these things, right? So we can just
Yeah,
watch yours.
yeah. That's fine. Because basically, I'm just showing us some stuff here. So under licensing here, you get to see the licenses you have and who are using it or who they are assigned to, right? So here you can see I have different licenses. I can see how many people are using it. So that can be a way to identify stuff within your organization. So you can see that for Power Apps, you can see that for Power Automate, you can see that for Copilot Studio and the likes for Dataverse. So you can see how your usage is. So where were we going actually? We're going into, so now let's go to manage. So we should be able to do this now. To manage environments, then go to your environment. What environment have I been? I think I've been in K's environment.
This environment.
So you can do that, and that should bring you to this page, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So over here now, some key things. We have this edit here. So say you've created an environment and you so if you've added a security group, you will see that security group. You see that security group here. So if you've created an environment and you've restricted the access to certain security groups, you'll be able to see and manage that here. Now, this case environment is a developer environment, so I can't do that for this type of environment. And I'm sure you won't be able to do that for yours too, because it's also a developer environment. Another area you want to look at is this settings. So if you click on settings, over here, this is where you get the settings you can manage for your environment, right? You get to see all of them here. What we are doing right now, especially in the context of security, you'll find that under users plus permissions. So under users plus permissions, you will see different settings that have to do with the security setup. Let us start from security roles. So users plus permissions, security roles, then you can click on that.
Sorry, what do you want us to click?
So users plus permissions, security roles.
Comes up
Are
with a
you are
blank
you in
page.
settings already?
Can't even find the settings. So
Okay, so this is from this page here. You click on settings at the top.
from which page? Environment.
So environment, the name of your environment. Then that should bring you here. Then you do settings.
Sorry, can I share my screen?
Yes, you can.
Yeah.
Yeah. So click on the name of your environment. That delegate 3 developer environment. So you click on that. Yeah. Then settings. Users plus permission. Then security rules. So you also see a blank screen.
I think it has to refresh. Mine is showing now.
Okay. So maybe because you're accessing it for the first time. Okay, cool. Let me share my screen again. All right. So just as I said, yeah, you can see that, there are loads of out of the box stuff here, which don't even concern you. But you'll notice we can see some of those ones we talked about, like the environment maker. We can see that if you scroll down, you should see system customizer, system admin. So you can see those ones we talked about. If we open system administrator, you see why it's the God mode. And now you see everything is organization all through, right? So that's why the system administrator can do anything. Now, these are tables. Now, security rules don't cover only tables. It also covers some privileges. So some privileges like print. So maybe for some users, you don't want them to be able to print. You don't want them to be able to run flows. You don't want them to be able to share. You don't want them to be able to download files. So there are some privileges. So you can see we have miscellaneous privileges. There's privacy related privileges. So you can see things like print. So you can say this user, I don't want them to have the print button. I don't want them to be able to sync to Outlook. I don't want them to be able to export to Excel, to do document generation, right? So you can decide, you can set those things up for your security rules. So it's not just tables, but here you can see different tables. You can see business management tables, business process flows. You can set you can set security rules up for that. Core records. So that's the out of the box tables. You can set up security rules for that. Custom tables. So you can set up security rules for that too. So customizations, you can set up security rules for that. And you see, you can do it for different stuff. So you see the layout is different now from what we saw in the actual documentation, right?
Right, I have
What's
a
what?
question. Sorry.
What?
I have a
I said,
question, sir.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so for the custom tables, that the tables
Mhm.
that we create on our own on Dataverse, yeah, while
Yeah.
on. So does it, some tables are based on solutions,
Okay.
if I'm not mistaken. So if you create a new solution, you're trying to build an app, you put some tables into it. So you create some tables for that solution,
Yeah.
like the solution, like the umbrella. So does this show based on solutions, or it just shows all custom tables that are created?
That's a good question. So what tends to happen, right, is when you create a solution, what tends to happen is you create security rules for that solution.
Mm,
So, say this school concept that we're looking at, right? So, the school management, whatever. For that solution is using a school table. Do we
yeah.
have a school table? I don't
You
even
got
think
like
so.
student table or
We
something.
have a student table basically, yes. So that solution is using a student table. So we can come here and create a copy of a security role and call it school admin, right?
Okay.
Now, in that school admin role, for the school's table, for that security role, we can decide and say, okay, school admin should be able to delete records.
But okay. Okay.
Now,
Okay.
that's the school solution.
Uh,
Say that same student table is used by another solution,
okay.
maybe a training solution.
Mm,
You would be creating a copy of a security role, and in that case, you say training admin.
yeah.
So maybe training admin, you don't want the admin to be able to delete the student record. So you set that up. So what you end up doing is in the school solution, you attach the school admin to the school solution,
Yeah.
right? Then for the training
Yeah. Yeah.
solution, you attach the training admin to the training solution.
Okay. Yeah.
So
My point.
even
Yeah.
yeah,
Sorry. Go ahead.
so even though it's the same table, right? You can still separate, you can still like it's still solution based. Now you may now ask me a question. What if somebody is a school admin and is a training admin? What is
Yeah.
going to happen? So if you're on the training app, so even though it's the training app, you're on the training app as a training admin,
Yeah.
but you're also a school admin. What do
Yeah.
you think is going to happen?
If you're on the training app,
The most
Yes.
yeah.
restrictive rule is going to set in.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. So in that case, on the training admin, so if there's a case, I think what did we say? We said that you are able to um you are able to delete and you're not able to delete, right? So in
Yes.
that case, that's going to block you on the what's it called? It's going
On,
to stop you from being able to delete on the other one because you are still on the same table. Do
wow.
you get?
Yeah. Okay.
So those are some things we think of in
So what
uh
do you do?
well,
So what do you do in that scenario?
you might create another custom security role or you take
And
them out of one and or
no.
get. So but that potentially could be an issue.
Hmm. I see. Okay. Interesting.
So now this is the system administrator security role. When you're copying a security role, you just click on copy. In a lot of cases, you may not want to copy the system
Mm,
administrator, right?
yeah.
Because that's already very powerful. But say basic user, for example, you can click on that, create a copy. So what solution are we doing? School, right? So we can say school admin and click on copy, right? If I now go back to security roles, I should see school admin here,
Yep.
right?
Sorry, we are supposed to do that, right? On our own end.
Yes, let's do that.
Okay, so
Have you created the tables we used in the previous classes?
no.
Okay, so that will be
Is that
a
not
blocker.
that not second class?
Maybe it is. Maybe it is. So you might not be able to, but I think you can still create the security role, but you probably not just have the tables to work with. Do you get? So once you
Okay.
create the table, you can still come back in and edit it.
Okay.
All right. So now we've created a copy of that basic user security role for this school admin. What we can now do is come over to the custom tables and look for, let's say, the student table. Now there's this filter up here that says show only assigned tables. So that means in this case, we'll see only tables where security roles exist already. You can change that to say show only unassigned tables, or you can choose to see all. So I'm just going to say show only unassigned tables since we've not assigned any to our student table. So let me try and find that. As if I'm in the right environment, which I hope I am. I should be able to, and we have a search here anyway. So that can be a faster way of getting where you're going. Okay. So I have my student table here. Can you see it? Have you been able to find yours?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So right now you can see the setup we have here is no access, right? So this security role currently has no access to student table, but I can now start deciding what I want. So for the admin, I probably want to give him organization access within the context of the students. Maybe we don't even have business units, and maybe we could even have business units that says, we could have business units that says maybe the school has different branches or something. So maybe even instead of organization, we just say business units. Let's give that a try. And yeah, maybe we can model it out that way. So
Does that
we
mean we
can
have
say,
to do business units?
yeah, so that means we'll have to do business units, which is a good, which is not a bad idea. So for create, so meaning I can create records within the context of my business unit. I can see all records within the context of my business unit. But this is admin, right? Okay, maybe. So it's more like an admin for that
For that
business
branch.
unit. Do you get an admin for that branch? So maybe we could have even called the branch school branch admin, and maybe there could now be like a super admin that can do things across all branches, right? So maybe let's just give all of this for the business unit level. But you see, we have the other levels, right? Um, so let's just give all of this. Now, one assignment I want to give us is what all these privileges mean. So create, read, write, delete is quite straightforward. Append to, assign, and share. I want you to tell me what each of those privileges mean. So if I give somebody append record, what does that do? As append, if I give them append to, what does that do? Remember, everything is within the context of the selected table, right? So let's do that. I wonder why there are two stars at the front of the name here. Interesting. So we can do that here too. Okay, Sims is a business unit that is giving that. So let's just do all of this. So we'll just give it business unit. And meanwhile, if you don't want them to be able to share records, you can say, okay, for this, none, right? So there's no law that says you need to apply everything to everyone. If you know within the context of your solution, you're never going to need to be able to assign records. You're just saying none. Do you get? Um, so there's no point giving access for a privilege that is not required because that could lead to issues. So imagine I give share access and somebody shares a record with another business unit, and that is a security breach. Do you get?
Yeah.
So you want to be conscious of what you're giving them. So I'll do that for subject to. Okay. Maybe I stop there. I know we have some other tables, but
I have a question.
yeah.
So see the way we are doing, I feel like in real life scenario, won't it be too, can we import? Let me use that word. like a template where the sort of like creates column, read, writes, how like can just pre-populate it, then bring here. Imagine you have a lot of security rules where you have to start picking the tables and start doing assign them. Is that not like stressful?
Well. I think so far in the real world, I've seen there's you kind of create them. Now, another thing that Power Platform has done is so within solutions, security roles are now a part of solutions.
Mm.
So if I come into what did I just open? This one. Okay. So if I come into my solution, I can add a security role. So you see security,
Yeah.
then I can add a security role. So that's going to save you having to redo all of this when you're importing to another environment. But on this, okay, so it seems I've even done some of these things before. We just created school admin,
Mm.
but I think in the previous class we've kind of talked about security roles. So that was probably when I did this school
Yeah.
basic user. So if you have the school basic user, I don't know if I asked you to follow along. If you have it, you can add it also. If you don't, it's just the same idea. So now that I've made this a part of my solution, if I export this solution to another environment, I don't need to go and configure it there
Okay.
again. Do you get? So that saves you that effort. But I would say within here, you still kind of have to go at it manually.
Mm.
Okay.
Okay.
So school admin, then I have the school basic user, which is the same thing. Let me look at what I set up over there. So these are security roles, school basic user. So let me go to custom tables. Let me see school. Okay, so I've not even done anything there. So you can also create a copy of basic user for school basic user.
Okay. So just copy basic user and name it school basic user.
Yes. Let me use the search. So this is all, let's say all. Okay, start searching for table name of privileges. Let's see, show all tables, custom tables.
Sure. So students. Mm.
I'll find the table.
Basic user.
Okay, so I couldn't find the table there again for the second one, but I'll look into that to see why that is the case. So, but basically, that security role setup, have we been able to add it to our solution? I'm Tosin, do you have a solution existing already? Yeah.
No.
Okay.
Are we
Yeah,
supposed to add it
I
to?
can. Yeah. So when you create the security role,
Oh
add
yeah,
it
yeah, yeah.
to the
We made the
solution.
solution the other time, right? From the first lecture, we
Yeah.
made the solution where we copied what you did. Basically, you did Veldarr and all that.
Yeah. So if you have it
Where,
already,
yeah,
that should be like something that has to do with school. Do you have that?
yes.
Okay, cool.
Where can I find it?
So from makethepowerapps.com,
Yeah,
if you scroll down here to solutions,
yeah.
then you should
Hold on.
find it.
From make the part. Yeah, solutions.
Yes. So can you
School
see
test.
the solution name?
Yeah, school test. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So if you click on that,
So it's empty.
okay, so it means you've not created the other stuff. But that's fine. You can do add existing, security, then security role.
Yeah.
Then once you do that, look for the security role you just created.
I have not created the security rule
Okay.
because I've not. That's the part I've not. I've not.
Okay. So to create the security role, that will be an admin center. So I'm going into the environment.
So I need to go back to admin center.
Yeah, well, just so what page are you on now? You're on the makethepowers.com, right?
Yeah,
So yes, you have to go back to the admin center.
that's from the gear icon, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm in the admin center. Do you want me to share screen?
Yes, you can do that.
Yeah.
Okay. So manage.
Delegate 3.
Yes.
Security role.
Well, that's a shortcut, yes.
Yeah, what next? System.
So you can do basic user to create a copy of basic user.
So what do I name it?
School admin
Yeah.
and copy.
Yeah, done. Search
So
for it.
go back to your solution now. Since you've not created the table, you won't be able to. You don't have anything to do on the security role, but you can open it just to see how it looks anyway. Okay. So once you've created your table, you should be able to search for the table, then adjust the security to what you want. But you won't be able to do that now. So if you go back to makethepowerapps.com, so you can add it to your solution.
Yeah. I should go back to solution.
Yes. So solutions, name of the solution.
School test.
Yep.
So I can add existing
Mm-hmm.
security.
Exactly. Then security role.
So I can search for the one I've just done now.
Yeah.
School admin. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I've selected it.
Then add. Yeah, so that's that. So Farouk, are you on track?
Yes.
Right.
Is that all?
Now, yes, that's all. So I'm going
Oh,
to
thank
show
you.
us something else. When it comes to model-driven apps,
You're not sharing.
yeah, let me get back to sharing. That's good. Mm, all right. So when it comes to model-driven apps, yeah, the way you share your app. So this is a model-driven app. You can see type model-driven app. This is the one we've been doing so far. When you want to share your app for Canvas app, when you want to share, you just type the name of the person and you click on share. But it's a bit different with model-driven apps. When you want to share a model-driven app, basically the way you share it is, first of all, for your app, you define what security roles what security roles are needed to access this app. So for example, I can say you can see automatically anyone that is a system customizer or a system administrator, they have access to all apps, right? Now, I can say anybody that has a school admin, so that has a school basic user or that has a school admin should be able to access this app, right? So I've defined that for the app itself. Then for anybody or any group, so you can share with groups. So say you have like a group, like an Azure AD group, as Entra ID group, you can share it with that group. Everyone. There's usually like an everyone grouping. Okay, well, maybe see.
So we're not able to share without defining, what roles or security rules the users that we're sharing it to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes. So that's how you share a model-driven app.
Well, why is it different
So
from Canvas one? Why?
I have no idea because model-driven app is all about the data anyway. And
Yeah.
I don't know if I mentioned it. If you create a school model-driven app, right?
Yeah.
And there's another, let's say, banking model-driven app.
Yeah.
If you know how to navigate yourself very well from that school model driven app, you'll be able to view your banking data as long as you have access to the data.
Yeah. The tables.
Do you
Yeah.
get? So
Yeah.
model driven app is all about the data. They feel like as long as you have access to the data, why do we need you to open another app? If you can
Yeah.
navigate and search and wherever, you can probably find it from within that same app itself. So that's why they're like, well, What we just care about is, do you have the necessary security role to run this app? If you have that, then I'm going to share it with you. So that's the idea. So
Sorry.
yeah.
At this point, we must have created an app, right? Before we can go
Yes,
further with
yes.
what you're
Yeah,
doing now.
yeah,
Because
yeah.
my own app saying I don't have any app.
Exactly. So you don't have any app now, but once you go through the other stuff, you will be able to
Okay.
you'll be able to do this. Yeah. So you click on the app, you decide what security rules are relevant to that app, then whatever user or group you are sharing the app to, you would need to assign. So because we've said these are the roles needed for the app, now you can see once I select this user, it's telling me, okay, this user or this group, what role do they have? So meaning I will have needed, so all the roles that are needed for the app, I'll have needed to define all of that so that by the time I'm adding the user or group, I can just say, okay, this group of users, I want them to be admin. And I do that and I click on share. Right. So that's how you get to start sharing stuff within for model driven apps. So since we're on the topic of security rules, I just thought to mention that. So that's security rules. That's how you create. And for Canvas apps, you don't do this, but Canvas apps, you're still going to do the security rule setup. But Canvas app, things are more on your control. Things are more in your hand. So you won't be able to restrict in that sense. But if a user tries to submit data to the data source and they don't have that privilege, it's going to throw an error that says you are not authorized to do this, right? But you need to be more clever in your Canvas app to proactively let the user know. Just like in model-driven app, if you don't have create access, you won't even see the button. So if I open an app now, so if I open this, okay. So if I open this now, I'm waiting for it. Okay. You see, we have this button to create a new record, right? If I don't have the privilege to create a new record, so if for me it is none, I won't even see this button at all. So model-driven apps are quite smart in that sense that they call it security trimming of the user interface. So basically what that means is that you will only see the records that you will only see the buttons that you are able to perform. Do you get? So if I can't create a new record, I won't see new. If my security role doesn't allow me to delete a record, I won't see the delete button, right? And if there's a case that somebody can see the delete button and is not supposed to see it, then you need to investigate your security setup again. Do you get?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Now, there's something I said earlier that is not correct, which is about how the security models are stacked. So basically, we had that that question of if one security role gives you delete, the other one doesn't give you delete. So it's actually opposite to what I said. If one gives you delete, the other one doesn't give you delete, you have delete because you have a security role that is granting you that delete permission.
Okay.
So that is the actual correct thing. I'll try and look for a documentation that points that out. But that's the actual correct thing.
If
So
there's a role
that
that's
gives you
already has like
access.
that task,
Yeah, yeah,
regardless of if you're assigned to two different roles, you'll still be able to.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
That
So
that,
that's
that
that's
one
how
is
it
the
starts.
Canvas apps.
No. Dataverse in general. Dataverse in general. So say in one role you have organization access, in another one you have user access. So maybe for read, it's just like if you look at the system administrator, as a system admin, I have read access to all records, right? But if you look at it here, So where's this app again? What app is this? School test. Okay. So if we look at it again, so let me come back to share. For myself, I'm a system administrator, fine. For what if I now give myself, which one was, maybe I give myself school admin. You remember in school admin, we've said that, it's only business unit level that we are granting. But because I'm a system administrator, if I look at that data, it's going to ignore the fact that this guy is restricting me. Because I already have access from system admin, I'll be able to perform those operations. Do you get? So if there's a security role that is saying I cannot delete a record, because I'm system admin, if I get there, I will still be able to delete the record because system admin is granting me that access. So that's a bit of a correction from what I said earlier. All right.
Oh,
So yeah,
sorry. I think I have it confused.
okay.
You know what you said earlier was that you get the most restrictive,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So what you said was wrong.
Yes.
Oh, okay. So when you have one role that is giving you access to do certain things, and you have
Mm-hmm.
another one that's restricting you, it's the freest one that gives you the most liberty.
Exactly. Yes. So that's the actual word, the most permissive access. So the ones that give you the most permission is going to supersede whatever is restricting you. And that system administrator is a good example because a system administrator can potentially have another role, another security role that is restricting him from doing some things. But because he's a system administrator, he already has the God mode. So nothing can stop him again. So I remember I said, even column security profiles, right? If you set up a column security, a column level security that is hiding somebody's salary, for example, if that is assigned to me and I'm also a system admin, I will still be able to see that salary because system admin is giving me the most permissive access. Do you get?
Yeah,
So that is the correct way of looking at it.
they should have done it the other way around. That makes sense.
Right,
Well,
because there's a whole
that's
lot of conversation around system admin, especially because it's just so powerful, especially when it comes to HR. They don't like to hear that. They don't like to hear that at all. Okay, so column security profiles. Another one. So we said we're going to do a business unit too. Okay. So this is the root business unit, as we said. This is the root business unit. So let's create a new business unit. So we should be able to do this. Yes, all of us should be able to do this. So if you click on new business unit, we said we wanted regional. So let's just say USA and China. So let's say USA schools, USA school. Now, when creating a business unit, you can say what is this parent unit. You remember that tree we saw, right? So this is how you start setting up a form of a tree view or a tree setup. So it's asking what's this parent business unit. This root is going to be the parent. That's fine. Then you can add all the other stuff. Then we can just click on save. Right. So that's USA school.
I'm assuming the root business unit is like system generated.
Yes, it is. Yes. It's
that was a
wherever.
bit. Sorry, I don't know if we can.
Okay, so basically what I did was new business
We need to do
unit.
it along, right?
Yes, yes. So what I did was new business unit. I gave it a name, USA School, and saved it. So I'm going to do another one for China. I'll just say China School. I'll say China school and save it.
Sorry, can I share my screen so that you just
Yeah.
walk me through?
Yeah. Okay.
My screen is very small. I can hardly follow what you're saying.
Hey, yes, that's not always nice. Okay,
Expand.
so where are we? Oh, I get why my. So if you go to environment, yeah, that's a good place to start. So the name of your environment, well, you can do settings, then users plus permissions, business units, then new business units. We can say school, China school or USA school, whichever one you want to do first.
Save, yeah.
Yep.
And another new business unit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's all.
Yep.
Okay, I'll stop sharing.
So I feel like we should take it a step further and create some other children. So let's create another one. So um let's say each of them have like IT and HR. So let's say USA IT. Then in this case, its parent business unit will be USA school. Right? So we're trying to set up like a parent-child relationship. So this USA IT, parent business unit USA school. Then I'm going to say USA HR, parent business unit USA school. Now do the same for China. So I can say China IT, parents China school. Let's say China HR, parents will be China school. Okay. So we have a form of a tree setup. Have we done that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Almost done.
Okay.
So just to make sure that I'm doing the right thing, when we do a new business unit,
Yeah.
we now say for say like now I'm on the China one.
Mm-hmm.
Say China IT, then
Yeah.
we go to parent business units
Yeah. Then you
and
set
then
that to China school.
school. Yeah, done.
And on this page, you'll be able to see its parents are. So, for example, you can see China HR, the parent is China School. USA HR, the parent is USA School, and you can just keep on nesting that as their setup is going to require.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So obviously, I think we were able to change after creating it and assigning the parents' business units. We're able to change the parents' business units.
So something like this.
Like if you want to change from China HR to, you can decide to change it to USA HR. Are we able to change it? Creating.
Yeah, it seems so. Let's see. So you still have this option here.
Yeah, so you can change it to USA HR. Okay.
Yeah.
Does this affect if okay, example, under China HR, they were able to create and edit, but after discussion, for some reason, started to change it to USA HR or USA HR. You can't create and edit, you can just view. That's like the requirement.
Yeah.
So if a user that is in the China HR previously, does that mean that you won't be able to view and edit if you change it from here?
Now that kind of change is like a very serious change. And so if you end up making that change, there's this button here that says reassign business unit records.
Okay.
So automatically that is not really going to affect the records automatically, but you have this option here. But it will be good to have a read of this. It says, okay, you must assign any users or teams at least one security role in the new business unit for the user or team to access the data in the new business unit. Based on the database setting, the security role assignments for users and teams are removed. To reassign business units record, all entities within the business unit must be reassigned to the same target business unit. These entities may include users, team, child business units, facilities, resource group, resource spec. If some fail to be reassigned, you must assign the reason for failure. So even by reading this, you know that's a very sensitive change. And if you get to that point, you should know that you've actually fucked up somewhere.
Yes.
You know somebody has seriously fucked up somewhere, because as much as it's possible, but there could be issues, there could be a load of issues. Because remember, I said every record keeps track of what business unit was created. So you are basically making a change that affects all the record that have been created. And I guess there's a documentation here that, could provide more context into what the issues might be. But yeah, that's a very serious situation to be in. Cool. So once you click on a business unit, you get to see what its children are. And you can move them around. You can change what the parents are. Now, the cool thing about business units is you can also decide what people are within that business unit. So we could now, if you look at this is China School. See what it's done is actually created a team called China School, where you can manage the team members, where you can choose to okay, that's so we're going to get into team now anyway. So that's business units. That's how you set up business units. Now we have teams also. If we come back to users plus permissions, you see teams. And now there are a couple of teams that show up here already. You can see these guys here. Now, if you want to create a new team, you can do create team. Remember, we talked about all of those. Well, let's go ahead. You can create a new team, so you can give it a name. So maybe we call this one. Let's just call it developers. I can't think too much. Okay, so maybe we say China developers or something. I don't know. Then you can choose a parent business unit. So maybe I call this one, or a business unit that it belongs to. Admin. Let me just make myself. It's admin. And you can choose the team type. So this is kind of where we're going. So you can choose the team type. You can do an owner team, which is just going to be a base. So on that team, you can just look at it like a team, like a Dataverse team. You can do access team, which we talked about there too. But where I'm really going is when it comes to Entra ID security group, right? So this is the Azure security groups, Azure AD security groups, or now it's called Entra ID security group. So this falls back to the question to say asked earlier about, okay, you're kind of having like a security setup that is already done, so you can mirror that into this place. Because in some cases, you're not even going to be doing business unit breaking. In some cases, you just kind of do it from the teams, and you can just set up different teams. Um, so for the group name, so if you have the group, you can just do that. And same thing with Office 365 groups. If you have groups created, you just search for the group name and you can create a team based on that group. Okay, so over here, I'm just going to set it to owner and click on next. And you can start adding members. And the thing about security roles then, or the thing about teams then, you remember we said for owner teams, you assign a security role. So because these guys are developers, maybe I just give them environment maker and system customizer. Okay. Then I can save that.
Let me know. So you're assigning roles to them, security roles to those users.
Yes, so whatever users are added to these China developers.
So what? So I'm giving them environment maker and
System customizer.
system customizer.
Then save.
Save.
Or maybe even these China developers, we should have assigned them to China. Okay, I think I did actually, to China IT. Okay. Are we on track?
Yeah.
Sorry.
I
think I'm on track. But this one you are doing now, are we supposed to do it?
No, so I've just added the China developers and that's all for now. Have
So
you
you
added the
assigned,
China developers?
Yeah. So what we just did now was assign people to China developers and give them a permission, right? Give them
Yes.
system admin permission.
No, system customizer and environment maker.
Yeah, and then saved it.
Yes.
I'm confused.
Okay.
So we created a new team.
Yeah.
And we China developers, and we assigned it to the business unit China IT.
Mm-hmm.
Then we added 2 users inside into the team.
Yes. Yes.
You added
users. I thought it was only one.
I think you added yourself. Okay, I added 2. Sorry, I tried to add 2. I tried to add Kayode.
Oh yeah, I added just myself. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so and we then assigned roles, security roles
to the team, to the China developer team. So to view it, so if you come to this China developers, if you click on this small icon, you see manage security roles.
Yeah.
You can click on that and you would see the security roles we've assigned to that team. Okay. So environment maker, system customizer.
So it means every user that is under this team have and must have this role, or the user that you selected.
Will
I'm
have.
trying to make
So,
it in my head.
oh, yeah. So what's going to happen now is, say I come in here and I add you now. So I don't know if you're in this environment. You probably are not, but let's see.
Is the
Delegates.
one.
Yeah, I know you're not in the environment, but Adela should be. Yeah. So say I take Adela now and I add her to this team. Automatically, she gets, within the context of this China developer team, she has this access. So she's not the one that has the access, it's the team that has this access. So any record, anything. So now in this security role is not really, it's not a record, it's not really about records in that sense. Do you get? This one is just to system customizer allows them to be able to build applications. So because I've done this now, Adiola can come into this environment and build applications on this environment. And all those things we said about system customizer, it now
Yeah.
applies to her.
As well. Okay. So we added her from the Power App part of Power. Can we add her also from these China developers? Will it be the same effects? I don't know. It's
Add her,
confusing.
add her
If you
to
want to
where?
add that, you have to go to edit
So,
team, right?
so first off, maybe I should have started from this. First off, users.
Yeah.
Users decide who are the people in that environment, right? So you saw I couldn't select delegate one or delegate two,
Yeah.
right? Because they are not in this environment.
Yes.
If I created the environment based on an Entra ID security group,
Yeah.
all the users in that security group become members of the environment.
Okay.
But this is not the case, right? So, but what I can do, if I want to be able to, if I want delegate one to come into this environment now, I can come in here and say add user. Then I can say delegate one. So delegate one, right? So I've selected that. Remember the conditions I said. The person must first of all be a valid user, must be enabled, right, in
Yeah.
the Azure AD Entra ID. It must have an active license,
Yeah.
whether it be trial or whether it be premium or whatever. So, but it must have an active Power Apps license. Then it must be a member of the environment security group if the environment has one.
Yeah.
And then at that point, I can click on add.
Add. Okay.
And now the user
It's a member of the
is a
environment.
member of the environment, right? Um, let's see. Um, let's do that again. Okay, so it's prompting me to add a security role. Maybe I just say,
Basic user.
maybe I just say add poop now or something, right? Okay, so at some point it should start appearing here. So let's see. Okay, so delegate one is here. Cool. Now, currently, delegate one is not a member of any team.
Yes.
But if I want to add him to a team, I can now come over to teams. I can come over to the developers team. Then I can add them as a user, as a member. So let me say delegates one. Okay. So now that I've done that, any record that is shared with this team, for example,
Yeah.
maybe because I've used developers, maybe it's a bit more confusing in that case,
Yes.
because it kind of takes it away from the actual records.
Okay.
But let's come back to record base, right? Any record that is shared with this team or any record
Yeah.
that belongs to this team or whatever,
Yeah.
or any security rules that applies to this team now begins to apply to them also.
Okay. So I can understand
Okay,
it
how did you say
clearly. Go ahead, Dustin. Sorry. Oh, you said, how do you say it?
Okay, I just wanted to ask him how
Oh.
to add someone to the team again.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll show you different options.
So my question is, remember when we were creating the teams, and we created that same China developers, we assigned So did we assign the role? The there were some 2 roles that we assigned to Kayode.
Yeah.
Did we assign it to Kayode or we assigned it to the team?
So we assigned it to the team. And that's where I'm going with this check access now. So you remember when we added delegate 1, we
Yes.
gave them app opener, right?
Yes. Yes.
And now you see here it shows directly assigned.
Yes.
But we assigned to these China developers,
Yeah.
we assigned system customizer and environment
Yeah.
maker.
Yes.
So because delegate 1 is now a part of China developers,
yeah.
this security role now applies to them.
Okay, yeah,
But you
yeah.
can
That's what I
see
was
it
trying to
is indirectly assigned.
Okay, yes. That's what I was trying to understand. Yes. Okay.
Exactly.
Thank you.
So now it applies to them. Okay. So this check access is quite useful when you're trying to figure out maybe why a user has access to a record.
It was very confusing because we're adding to the team, we're adding to the user.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. So that's the idea of teams
Ask how we can
and
add users to the
to
how
a
we can add
team.
the team, yeah.
Okay. So say the team has been created, you can either just click on the team and yeah. You can either just click on the team name and add the users, or you can click on this and say manage team members. And now you see the team members, then you can add members to it. So this is one way. Another way is just to click on the team name and it brings you into a model-driven app and you can add existing user.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, makes sense.
Interesting.
Now, see what I was saying about model-driven app not caring whatever you are using your app for, and they just show you what you have access to. Because if you look at this, can you see this is the app we built that has the student class account? So even though this whole team stuff, we've never added it into our app, but model-driven app just said, well, I'm going to show you the data within that same app because you have access to it. Do you get? So they don't really care too much. If you are savvy enough, you can actually get access to, you can find all the data you have access to. All right. Okay, so what else? So you can see those are different setups. Now, I think the other one is hierarchy. Okay, column security profile too is quite interesting. So I think we'll look at that. We should be going on a break soon, but let me just quickly talk about hierarchy, then we can go on a short break also. So, as I said, hierarchy, you can decide whether you want it or not. By default, it's disabled. You can choose to enable it, but you have to choose either you're doing a manager hierarchy or a positional hierarchy. So, let me quickly first talk about manager hierarchy. When you add a user to an environment, so let's come to users. Let me say users, and let me select this guy. When you come here, okay, so we have the position. So you have the position, and that kind of alludes to the positional hierarchy setup. So say I can give this guy, so let me give this guy. So um we have everybody within the same team, right? With the same developer team. So, but maybe this one is lead developer. Maybe I call this guy lead developer. You have on system user specify the position you want to assign. Why is it not? Okay, maybe because I've not enabled position hierarchy actually. So maybe let's come back here. Users permission, hierarchy security, enable position hierarchy. So let me click on save. So you can do this too. I think it's still relevant within the context of what we're doing. Man, and waiting is part of this job. All right, cool. So let's see if that lets me do it now. Still not. Let me try one of the other. Okay, so this one says change position. So I think I need to set up the positions first. So let's say hierarchy security and configure. So with this positional hierarchy, this is where you get to configure what positions exist and how the hierarchy is set up. So let me create a new position called lead developer. Right, and I can save and close. I'll create another position called junior developer. Then the parent position for that will be lead developer, right? So I can, okay, so that's the setup I want. I'm happy with that. I can close that. So if I come over to the users, let's see now. Okay, so now I see lead developer, right? Then I can have another user and say junior developer, right? Okay. Yeah.
So I'm at the point where we just created the two positions, the lead and junior.
Okay. Yeah.
What do we do next from there? Sorry.
So I have assigned lead to one user and junior to another user.
We're assigning from the users.
Yes, from the users. Are you on track, Tosin?
And just one position we can assign.
Yes, the user can have just one position.
I've lost you guys. I had to go do something, so I think I'm way back.
Okay. Well, we still have to record them. So basically what we're doing is we're setting up, at least we set up two positions and we're looking at position hierarchy. So if I come back to this hierarchy security here, we can see there's a column that says depth. Now this depth is how many lower positions do we want them to be able to do we want them to be able to manage? So if I say depth of 1, meaning whoever is, so it's a tree, right? I will only be able to see and manage the data of whoever is just underneath me.
Okay.
If it is a depth of 3, so maybe the person underneath me also has another position underneath them. I'll be able to manage it up to that level. Do you get?
Wow. Yeah.
So, and this is actually quite good in the sense that maybe, and so maybe there's like a user, maybe there's a record assigned to somebody underneath me, right? So maybe Adiola, and it is even on a user level. So maybe it's even only her that can see the record, right? If I enable position hierarchy, even though that record is on a user level for her, I will still be able to see the record because of this position hierarchy setup. Do you get? And that helps in a case that maybe somebody is on leave, for example, and they have some records, whoever is above them can still go in and manage those records. Do you get? Even though the record doesn't belong to them, but because of this hierarchy setup, they can still manage those records. Do you get?
Mhm.
So, and that's the same thing basically with manager hierarchy. But manager hierarchy is just that instead of it being position, it's going to be manager. So we are going to say who is the manager of who. So for
Okay.
example, I can say that so let me click on this guy. So who is the manager? Okay, so this is Teams. There should be the okay manager, right? So say I can come to so maybe delegate one is my manager, right? So if delegate one is my manager, so what that's just going to mean is, and if I have manager security model, right? So that
Yeah.
means any data I have, any data I own, delegate one will be able to manage that data also.
Okay.
So that's the idea of hierarchy security model.
In
It's
terms of
quite
the
useful.
depth,
Yeah,
realistically, like in real life,
yeah.
um, do you think it is good enough for like the manager should have like a lot of depth, like maybe like 5, where they can see down subordinates what they are doing or their records, or is it better to have it like in a sort of way that just someone below me?
I'll say it depends on what they're trying to achieve because as you go higher up in organization hierarchy, they tend to focus less on the nitty-gritty, but
Yeah,
more on like an overview. Do you get? So that's why 3 might be good enough because like what's the point, right? But depends on how the organization is set up and wherever works for them, basically. I don't think there's like a major recommendation, but I think managers generally might not be concerned too much about all the nitty gritty. But
yeah.
3 seems to be a good number, to be fair.
Okay.
Cool.
Cool.
Mm, and I think those are the okay column security profiles. Now this one, let's go on a break before we take this one. This one has a couple of moving parts, but is also interesting. So maybe we also do a 15 minute break like before, then we'll come back and continue. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Cheers up. Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, awesome, cool. Great stuff, great stuff. So let's see, where are we?
Column security profile.
Yeah. Okay, cool. All right. So column security profile is a couple of steps that needs to be taken. The first one is this one here within the settings. So you come over here for settings. Oh no, this is not actually the first one. So the first one is to identify what column do you want to enable for the security setup. And you do that from your actual table. So if you go to make.paps.com, Tosin might not be able to because I don't think you've created the tables. But this is recorded and you can always catch up, but it's still good for you to see so that when you're watching the recording, it's like a second view. So I'll come into custom and I will come into the student table. Well, let me do it from within the solution. So solutions, you go to the name of your solution. Now let me show you something that I just discovered yesterday.
Yeah.
Uh, if you come over to, because I know they've always told me when you're making change to something that is a part of a solution, do it from within the solution.
Yeah.
But I never understood why until yesterday. So if I come to tables, custom, and I say student, right?
Yeah.
Let me add a new column. I'll just call this test column. So I'll just say test outside solution. Okay, I probably won't have that here because, but let's see. So I just said test outside solution, right? So that's the name of my column that I just added to this table. You don't need to do this anyway. So let me click on save. Now where's the column? Test outside solution. So look at this column that has the name, right? The internal name. Can you see this? You remember the whole stuff we did about cost publisher.
Mm.
Can you see that it didn't follow
The
the
VL.
the VLS publisher that we did, right? It hasn't used that in this case.
Mm.
And you know that and part of, remember I said part of the advantages of solution is the whole publisher thing. So when you make edits outside a solution, it doesn't follow that, which I just saw yesterday and I found interesting. So that's why anytime you have something within a solution, when you want to edit it, instead of doing it outside the solution, do it within the solution. That just makes sure everything is consistent and in the right place. So let's come inside the solution to the tables and student table, right?
Yep.
Then columns, and let's do it on the age. So let's say age is a sensitive field and we don't want everybody, we only want specific people to see the age. So once you go to the age column and you go to advanced options, you have this option here that says enable column security, right? So I can click on that. There's this idea of masking rules that just is quite recent too. What the masking rule does is, you know, like when you're typing a password and instead of seeing what you wrote, you see dot dot dot.
Yeah.
That's what a masking rule is. So there are some predefined ones that, and you can also change it up. But here we're not doing that. Now you can enable column security. So now that I have this column enabled, I should have even showed us before. But now that I have it enabled, if I come over to my settings, so if I come over to settings and I say column security profiles and I say new profile, I can give it a name. So let me just say hide age and save. So once I do that, now I get to see all the columns that are enabled for column security profile. Now you can see we have this age. Before, if I didn't.
Right. Can you just repeat the step again, please?
Okay. So is it this one? Okay,
No,
so let
no.
me start from the beginning.
Okay, yeah, you can.
So let me start from the beginning. So you go to the column that you want to enable for column security profile. You click on it, advanced option, and click enable column security. Once you do that, you can come back to your settings here, right? Then you go to users plus permissions, column security profile. So the first thing you have to do is to create the name of the profile. So in my case, I created a name called hide age, right?
Yeah.
Then after you create the name, you click on it.
Okay.
Then you see all the columns that are enabled for column permission. And now we can see age. If we check this before enabling age, we
So,
won't see age as one of the options here.
so
So
it's
that's why,
oh,
yeah, go on.
so it's because we marked it from the table solutions, the table, we
Yes,
marked that
yes,
option. That's why it's
yes,
appearing as
exactly.
tables that.
Yes.
Okay.
So
So
what are these
once
other ones that are here?
some of the whole Dataverse shenanigans.
Oh, okay.
So these are other, so you can see this is a contact table. So this is a password column or something. So a lot of all this stuff are Dataverse stuff that they've just done for their own reasons, right? But because we have the same platform, we can also do our own when we want. So this is an example of a column that we want to specify. So once we come in here, we can now say edit, and we'll say, okay, for whoever we grant this, the name I gave it is not even wrong, it's not correct. I should have called it show age, right? So because anybody I assign this profile to will be able to do whatever I specify here. So I can say whoever I assign this to should be able to read. In some cases, maybe I only want them to read. I don't want them to be able to create a new one. I don't want them to be able to update it. Do you get? You can specify. So for this H column, I can create multiple profiles, right? And maybe say only maybe recruitment team should be able to create. Do you get? Or maybe only certain people should be able to read. So you can create multiple profiles even based on the same column. So I can say only people who are assigned this should be able to read and maybe create, right? Maybe nobody should be able to update it. I can create another profile for who is able to update it. So once I've done this, only people that I assign this profile to will be able
To create and read and see.
yes, we'll be able to do that. So let's see. Talking about where to assign the profile. So let me come to Teams. Let's say, let's just go for this. Um, let's try this guy. Mm, talking about where to assign it. Let's see, I'll see here. Let's try on the user level. Because they keep moving stuff around. They keep moving everything around. Because before it used to be as part of the setup. Let's see, let's come in here. Oh yeah, that's what they did. So we set up the permission here, then over here, you can decide what teams or users have this profile. So I can come in here and say, maybe I want let's just use the developer guys. So I want these developer guys to be able to view this record. So now only the developers are going to be able to see data that are in that column.
Okay.
Obviously, the system admin can see everything, but apart from that, the only the people in the developers team will be able to
To see.
see that data. So
We
that's
can
how you
also
set
do
up.
for users also. We can make it user specific.
Exactly. So you can also do for
But
users.
ca-
But a
ca-
lot of security things is always nice
uh,
to get them into a team
how
because
about business
that's easy
units?
to manage. Well, a business unit, so business units have if you remember when we set up business units, it kind of automatically created a team. So like
Yeah,
this China school, so
yeah.
you can also do that. So it's
Okay.
not the business unit per se,
That's
but
it.
it's
Yeah.
like the team based on the business unit. So you can do that. All right, cool. So the next thing we just want to look at is in terms of the administration options. So kind of admin center, just the admin centers. Now, this is the old interface of the admin center, but we are using the modern one. And the admin center is really where you go to manage stuff like your environment. You get to see some analysis, you get to see resources, your licenses, your data policies, and things like that. So you get to do all of that in your in your admin center. Now, one of the key things that you see in your admin center is your analytics. So if we come over to the interface and let's see where they've put that here now. So that should be monitor. And well, not so much is going on in this environment. Let's see what does this one say. Yeah, tenant level analysis enable. So not so much is going on in this
Mhm.
environment. So there's no data to display, right? But once you have like an active environment, you'll be able to see like charts of the activities, the number of users, and even when stuff are failing, you get to see it. You get to see error rates. You get to see different kind of analytics that relates to. So you can see here, this should have been like dashboards
Yeah.
that shows data of usage. And it's quite nice because you get to see regions that are using your application and you get to see how frequently they use it, what kind of devices they are using. So it gives you those kind of that kind of overview. So if I come over here, you see active users. Well, this is Dataverse, right? Active users, API calls, pass API pass rates. Even for apps, you get to see error rates, like how frequently they're having errors. So it gives you that administrative overview. I'm talking about capacity too. That's another key thing to look at because every license has different capacities. So you want to be able to monitor what licenses do you have, who they are assigned to, what's your database capacity, because every environment has there's like a limitation on capacity based on your environment. So you can buy add-ons. So every environment has like a database, I think 2 gig or something. If you end up needing to use more than 2 gig, then you have to talk to Microsoft to buy more capacity. But when designing, especially at Dataverse solutions, we try not to do stuff that requires you saving things in Dataverse.
Yeah.
When I say things, I mean files, right? Because once you start saving files in Dataverse, your database capacity starts building very quickly, right? So we kind of do things like SharePoint, we integrate with SharePoint, so your data is stored there.
How about when we save records on our apps? Does that not
No,
impact
records are
it?
they're very small.
Very small.
Records are very small. Is when you start talking of files, those are the things that really build up your capacity. And well, it's not unlimited at the end of the day, even though it's kind of, yeah, you can, with just records, you can hardly run into issues with
Okay.
Dataverse. Yeah.
Okay.
But it's when you start going into saving files, that's when you start running into trouble. And some stuff I've done too in some cases, maybe for simplicity, we save the record, then we sync it over somewhere and delete it.
Oh,
So
wow.
I've done that too in some solutions, but you try not to keep stuff in Dataverse. So you can see we have database, we have file, we have logs. So these are three different categories of storage. So you can see database, there's like a limit for files, there's like a limit for log. And yeah. So basically that's that. You get to see. So previously there was like a separate tab for that, but now you get to see those kind of things under licensing. You get to see that. Okay. Now coming back here, so there are some features you can enable for your environment, and the whole Power Platform space is like always developing and always changing. So there are some features you can choose to enable. So if I come back into my environment, under settings, then there's products, and sometimes you find yourself coming under behavior, and sometimes you find yourself coming under features. So over here, you get to see different features that you can choose to turn on or turn off. So I will encourage you. So maybe another assignment. Do we remember the first one? Because I've not written it down. The first assignment.
It's the column security for like the security rules for like append, assign.
Oh yes, yes. So that's the first assignment. Like, what does it mean to append a record? What does it mean to assign append to? What does it mean to assign share? So that's the first one. The other one is just to go through this features page and come up with a list of the features you find interesting. And now, for a lot of these features, there's like a link for you to learn more. I was checking if there was the information icon, but you can see for a couple of them, there's like a short description of what they do. So just tell me the features that you find interesting or that you feel like would be useful. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Then once I upload this recording to YouTube too, I'll send it to us in case you want to refer back. So there's this Dataverse search, which is quite useful. It gives like like a very wide search. So this Dataverse search, yeah, it still falls over to what I said about Dataverse, um where you can see all the data you have access to. So that's part of what Dataverse search does, is like a very detailed search across all your Dataverse data. So even though technically the app is not showing the data, you can still do a Dataverse search and get the data from within the app, right? So there are different options you have here. And just so turn on Dataverse search in your environment. Okay. So we both should be able to do that. So Tosi, are you able to follow along and turn on Dataverse search?
Yeah, I've just resigned. I'll watch the last 1 hour of the video.
Okay.
Andrew.
Okay. So that's Dataverse search. We should turn it on. And I'm glad that this save is now here. Before, you had to scroll down to the bottom to see the save button. But yeah, in this new interface, the save is always there, which is good because sometimes you end up making a change and you forget to save. But this is quite good. All right, cool. Let me see. I think I saw one annoying feature there.
Annoying.
There's one Copilot feature that was very annoying. Enable pilots. Okay, this one is quite good. There was one that is always like prompting you to form field assistance. Yeah, this was quite annoying. Automatic suggestions. Yeah, maybe I just leave it, but sometimes you might just want to turn this off, to be honest. It was quite annoying. Before, I think it was just on by default or something. It was very annoying, but I won't be surprised if they've changed that because a lot of people were
Okay.
annoyed by that. Yeah. All right, cool. So let's see what else. So Dataverse search. Dataverse search, as I said, is very detailed. That you can, for a table, you can index. So if you know about search, you know a lot of times search is like based on indexing, like getting good searches based on indexing. So if you want some columns in your solution or in your tables to appear in Dataverse search results, you can do that from your solutions. So if you come over here, so let's come in here. So if you go to the solution you're working on, so let's say school tests, overview, and you see a Dataverse search. So now I've enabled Dataverse search, right? So you can do a manage search index and choose. So currently these are
Did we get
the
there again? Sorry.
what?
How did we get to this
No, so this is your normal
normal
solution, the
solutions?
solution
Okay.
you've worked on. Yeah. So
Oh, okay.
solution, school test, then overview. So normally it defaults you into this list view
Yeah.
of objects, but just above that there's the overview,
Mm-hmm.
and that brings you here. So usually when you want to export, you can come over to overview and export. That's what I always do anyway. But here we have the Dataverse search, right?
Okay.
So I can click on this, and here it says manage which tables can appear in search results up to a maximum of 950 columns per environment. So there's like a limit of the number of columns or the number of tables that can appear in Dataverse search. So you can choose. So now you can see this account table is already indexed, right? So, but you can come here and say, oh, I want all these guys to be available in Dataverse search also, and click on save.
This Dataverse search, is it when like you're on like on the app and trying to search
Yes.
the record on maybe
Yes.
student's name, you can just type it
Yes.
on. So if you don't enable it from the settings, you won't be able to do this feature. And if you don't mark it
Yes.
on the app, you won't be able to do that. Cool.
Yes. So there was something I wanted to show, but I think now let me turn off Dataverse search quickly. So we see what the difference between ordinary search is and Dataverse search. So let me turn it off. So I have Dataverse search turned on when I open this up, and that's why we see this. Let me refresh it again now that I've turned off Dataverse search. You see, we don't see that
No,
big search in the middle, right?
yeah, it's
We
gone.
just see this tiny search here.
Yeah.
Now, this tiny search here is what's called advanced find, right? It uses advanced find. It's a kind of search. Let me say, right? So but it's not as smart as Dataverse
Dataverse
search.
search, yeah.
um yeah, it's not as sweet and smart as Dataverse search. So if I come back here and I enable Dataverse search and I refresh and refresh and refresh and refresh,
Did we save? Oh, he's here.
and now it's here, right?
Oh,
So this guy is like it gives is a much smarter kind of search, and it searches across like
the
maybe I can say you should look into what they. So a third assignment would be to look into the difference between Dataverse search and should I say advanced find or something? Okay, so there's quick find, there's advanced find, and there's Dataverse search. So the difference, tell me the difference between the three: quick find, advanced find, and Dataverse search. Okay?
Yeah. I have a question again. Sorry,
Yeah.
so if when we were on the overview on the app
Yeah.
and we selected the advanced search, we picked the tables, the
Yeah.
column, is it yeah, was it the tables or the columns? We
Yeah.
picked
The
the
tables. So we've picked the
yeah,
tables, but you'll notice it says 0 columns added to the index.
yeah.
So that tells us that we still have to come over to the actual tables themselves. So let's say the class table and decide what columns we want to index. You know, we have a maximum of how many columns is that?
Mm.
We have a maximum of, so what table am I on? Class. So let me just use this guy. Okay, that's class. Let me use name. Let me go to name. And so enable auditing, blah blah blah. Let's see. Let me go on the table level. Is there anything about search, audits, leverage quick form, on-time rejection, governance system, appear in search results? Okay, so that's enabled. Can be taken offline. Let me see. Do we have? Let me try students. Are there not more options here? Yeah, I'll check up on that. Usually there should be more options to actually add the columns. Let's see, coming over here, Dataverse search, manage search index, 0 column added to index. Yeah, I'll double check on that.
Okay.
Columns indexed in this environment. Yeah. Okay, cool. Um, all right. So we'll double check on how to add columns. So we've added the tables. We'll double check on how to add the columns. And auditing to another good is another interesting setting to look at when you're kind of configuring your environment. And over here we have, so within settings, we have audits and logs, and there's like audit settings that you can edit. So you can decide whether you want your environment to be audited, whether you want access to be audited. So whenever the system is accessed, so maybe if someone signs in, do you want to save an audit log? One thing you need to know about audit is they take up space.
Mm.
So there's a retention policy that says how long do you want to keep the audits? So do you want to keep it for 30 days, 90 days, blah, blah, blah. Depending on, whatever you're trying to achieve, or sometimes whatever the regulation is, because some of these things are like compliance
Yeah.
based and you must keep some records for a certain amount of time.
Cool.
So for each tables, each column, you can choose to enable auditing. You see that also in the settings. In the advanced settings, I think even just now we saw some of them. Let's see a table. Where's the table? This is the table. So on the table level, if you come to properties, you will see audit changes to this data, right? If you go to columns also, you can enable or disable auditing. So, okay, enable auditing, right?
Yeah.
But you see, auditing has to be enabled in the environment for it to work. And that's also like an exam question too, because you need to enable auditing in the environment for it to work, even though it's enabled on the table. All right. And there's audit summary, which just gives you like a report of your audit data, and you find that here also. So when you say audit, there's audit summary view, so you can access that from there. Duplicate detection we've talked about. I'm glad we've talked about that because it's usually like a mouthful to talk about, but yeah, we've kind of gone through that, which is awesome. There's bulk delete, which is like a system job you can set up to delete data based on some criteria. So based on some criteria, maybe it could no longer be relevant. So it's like a job that you can set up, and you find all of those data kind of settings here. So you find them over here where you see data management, right?
Yeah.
So data management, we have so you see all the duplicate detection stuff. Then you can see bulk deletion too. So you can go and configure that. Okay, well, that's loading. Let's just come back here. So for example, you can make a data inactive, and once it's inactive, you can actually have like that bulk delete jobs to say, okay, records that have been inactive for a certain amount of time, delete them. Do you get? Okay, so there's the idea of data retention also. So this is bulk delete. If you say new, you want to set up a bulk deletion job. So as I said, you are defining the criteria. So based on what condition do you want to set up the delete, and what's the schedule. So those are the two things you're going to be setting up when you're doing the bulk delete. What else do we say? Data retention. And just quickly, let me jump on something. There's something called data loss prevention policies. Have you heard of that before?
Data loss prevention policies. It
Mhm.
sounds like something I've heard. But
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's one of the things we also get to that you also get to configure. Let me find where they've moved it to now. It sounds like a security thing to be fair. Okay. So I think this should be easy.
Reminded me of what you just said. Actually, reminded me of the question I wanted to ask you.
Okay.
So with doing Power Apps,
Yeah.
how can you, as a developer, make sure that the Power Apps you're building is compliant with some of all these policies, government policies, for instance, about data and other things? Is there that kind of feature within Power App?
So there's no direct feature, but they have enough tools for you. So what I'm trying to say is that you need to know what policy you are trying to apply, but they have ways of you applying that. So for example, when you're talking about auditing, there's like compliance that says, oh, there's like compliance on how long you should keep somebody's data, right? So while Power Platform is not going to just say, okay, I'm following this regulation and this is it, but it gives you auditing options, and it gives you an option, just as I showed earlier, where you can set how long your data retention should be. So there are tools for you to implement it, but it's not going to do it for you in that sense. Do you get? And when creating an environment
Yeah.
also, you have the option to set up what region the data is going to be stored. So that can also, talking about compliance, there's a compliance that says Europe data should not leave Europe, or America data should not leave America, all those kind of things. So you have to consciously make the right choice, because the system is not going to make it for you. Do you get?
Yeah, makes sense.
Okay.
Sorry. Is there a way you can also like
Yeah, I'm with
is
you.
there a way you can also like do this compliance like in a framework kind of thing? Then just apply when you do any solution as per the region where you are doing that solution for. You just apply that compliance that you already have, like you already templated it. So all you have to do is just apply.
Mm, I've not seen anything like that. Because when creating environments, you kind of have to come in here and do all of these things, then choose the region and stuff like that. Then you can set up for each environment too. You have those security setup that you can put together. So yeah, I'm not aware of like a central place to set it up and reuse. No. Oh, right. It's quite interesting. I can see a couple of new stuff here. Which sounds guest access manage, whether people who are designated as guests can access this tenant. I think one thing they've been able to do with this redesign is they've been able to bring to show more features, especially around like, I don't know, like a lot of all these security features were not easily accessed. So I feel like that's quite good. And a lot of times where you see preview, that's something they're just kind of testing, which is quite nice. You can see how many global administrators you have, how many Power Platform administrators. This is quite good because, yeah, in some cases, it's not really easy to track all this information. And potentially, there could be people that have access to stuff that they shouldn't. So it's good. Imagine you come here, you see 99 global
Yes,
administrators.
something is wrong.
Then you know something is really, really wrong somewhere. So yeah, that's good. I'll still play around all this. I'm actually thinking of doing a LinkedIn post around the this new admin center. Because last week we had a client that they wanted to do some stuff that they used to do before, but they just couldn't find it in the new admin center. And it was quite interesting. I saw a lot of useful settings
Okay.
that were not previously here. So I'll need to do some digging around and potentially make a video around that. But yeah, cool stuff. Let's see if we can just go through some questions.
All right.
Um, did you say something?
No, nothing.
Oh, okay. So, which tool can transform data and import it into Dataverse?
It's the import
This
data.
is this is the kind of exam questions.
I'll say wizard.
What?
A.
Yeah. So Tosin might not know it because I think he was in the second class. We talked about import and all that. So, but the answer is actually D. That's why I said is one of all those exam type of questions where potentially there are multiple correct answers, but there's a more correct answer. Right. So Power Query generally, and Power Query, and you get that. The reason why this is a quite tricky is you get Power Query when you use the data flows. You remember we talked about data
Yeah.
flow. When you use data flows, you have like the Power Query page where you can transform your data. And transforming data just means cleaning. And I think we kind of talked
Yeah, we
about,
did. Yeah, we did.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So where you can transform data. So that interface itself is Power Query. So this
Mm.
is a trick question. And yeah, so you can use Power Query to um transform your data before importing
Yeah.
it. Cool. So security roles are used for all of the following except which one? So what do we see? This also looks like a trick question. A little bit. Okay.
A.
So say what do you think? Is Tosi still here?
I think it's B. Sorry. I
Okay.
didn't know
Yeah,
I was
I was
B.
just checking. B. Okay. B is quite interesting. Restricting access to an environment. Because now I even think they are.
Yeah.
Now I think they are wrong. Let me see. Security rule restricting access to an environment. Wait, security rules are used for all of the following except which one? That's quite tricky because B looks correct. What they have here is D, which is also correct. But I'm trying to look at a situation where B is correct, and I'm not thinking of anyone now. So but D is correct because for columns, that's going to be the column security profile, right?
Oh, so is that not part of the security? Oh my God.
No, that's not a security rule.
Oh,
Remember, security rule
yeah.
is the part that talks about what's it called, the level of access
The
you
level
have
of, yeah,
and what privilege you have
true.
access for. But when they say restricting access to an environment, I think that is also a correct answer because I don't see how a security rule will restrict access to an environment. Entra ID security group can do that. License can do that and all of that. But security
That's
role, I'm not convinced. So that's probably, but I don't know why that would be a correct answer anyway.
Maybe it's
Um,
time.
well, can you say that again?
I said maybe it's time to investigate it.
Or to think of it, yeah, because there was an issue I was asked to look at last week, and so there were these developers that were they even developers? No, they were testers, right? They were brought in to test an application, but they were just having issues, like they were not able to see the apps, they were not able to see or do anything, right? I think it's like they said, even when they give them the direct link, it tries to open, but it just shuts off, like it just cancels, something like that. So that was the experience they were having. And that was where I made the mistake that I talked about, that I assigned system customizer role to them.
yeah.
So once I assigned system customizer role to them, they were able to access the app. They were able to do all the stuff they wanted to do. But to myself, I know I've given them more than they should. So maybe that's restricting access when I think about it, because it was until I gave them the system customizer role that they were able to.
Access
I
to invite.
didn't, yeah, I didn't do a video with them to see what experience they were having, but from the chats I saw, what they said was that once they try to open it, the thing just bounces them back. Like it's like try to open, but maybe when they realize that